Welcome to Seacoast Stories, a podcast about the people, businesses, and newsmakers that make the Seacoast an American hidden gem. I'm Troy Farkas, and on today's episode, my conversation with Ashley Ryall, a self-proclaimed Seacoast adventurer who 6 years ago pressed the self-destruct button on her seemingly perfect life so she could instead build a life far more authentic to her. Ashley is unlike any other guest who's joined this show. She doesn't have a business. She's not a Seacoast household name. She's just a person with a story to tell, and that will always have a place here. Ashley shared an abbreviated version of the story you're about to hear at a Moth storytelling event in Boston last fall. She's also writing a memoir, hoping to inspire women with her story of self-destruction, self-discovery, and why sometimes getting as far away as possible from home may be the only way to truly come home. Today's show is presented by Three Bridges Yoga and JOBTALK, and we begin this episode by traveling back to Ashley's senior year of high school when she was desperately trying to leave the one-stoplight town of Weare, New Hampshire.
I was going on college tours, and my parents had visited Saratoga Springs. They thought Skidmore might be a good school for me. I was exploring maybe potentially playing basketball at the D3 collegiate level.
I'm from that area, by the way.
I forgot about that. Yeah. It's a great school. And for a while, I was like, I'm going to go to Skidmore. This place looks awesome. And then I toured at Connecticut College, and this super hot guy was like leading the tour, and he said, naturally, that's how it happens, right?
Yeah, of course.
And he said that he shared with us students considering wanting to go to Con that he studied abroad in Australia and had this amazing experience. And so I'm walking through this college campus, buildings just larger than life, and very affluent student body goes there. And I told my parents I want to go to Con and I want to study abroad in Australia. Like even before they said, can we even pay for this? Or even before anything else, I said, no, I want to go to Con and I want to go to Australia. And then I did.
Wow. Good for you.
Yes, we all made it happen. And my parents sacrificed a lot financially so that I could go there and have that experience.
Well, that's pretty amazing that they did that for you even after the tumultuous childhood. So you go to Connecticut College and you study in Australia.
Yes.
Where?
In Sydney. And I studied marketing at UNSW for a semester, and then I stayed and got an internship at a PR firm.
New South Wales?
Yes. Yeah. And then got an internship and stayed in Australia and lived there for another 4 months interning at a PR firm.
And was this trip everything that you'd ever imagined?
It was, Troy. Here's what's really interesting. I didn't know this at the time, but my trip in Australia was life-changing. I mean, a lot of people study abroad, and you get to meet people from all over the world, build friendships with people who don't look, act, or talk like you. And I got back to Con my senior year, and all I wanted to do was graduate and go back to Australia. That was like my one goal. I was like, I'm just going to finish out senior year, go back to Australia. A lot of my friends who had also studied abroad in Australia were doing that and did that. And I kept telling all my friends, telling family, like, no, I'm going back to Australia. And I never did. And I realized only through writing this book and many more years of just adulthood that the reason why I loved it and looked back so fondly on that experience is because I could be anyone I wanted to be, and I could be someone that I wasn't, right? Like growing up, I was shy. I had eczema on my face. I felt really alone and isolated in high school. I was trying to find my friend group. I was depressed. My parents always supported me, but again, they fought a lot. And so going to Australia, I could be extroverted. I could be all these things that no one would know, right? Like no one knew me from little girl as new, like back in New Hampshire. So being in Australia, I could act differently. I could behave differently. I could try on a new face, and no one would know the wiser. And that was really why I looked back so fondly on Australia and my time there. But life happened, and I came to the conclusion that there was a place in my life for that experience, and that I could leave it as it is and be grateful that that happened. But I didn't need that feeling of wanting and needing to be somebody else anymore.
So were you able to successfully be a different version of Ashley in Australia?
Yes, I believe I was.
Okay, how so?
Yeah. I was a lot more outgoing. I was naturally curious because New Hampshire, we didn't have a lot of diversity or folks from other countries. It was very small town. And
there's actually a big New Zealand to Weare pipeline that you didn't know about.
Is there? Interesting. Good to know. I'll have to check that out. Yeah. So I think it's more that I was naturally curious. I like learning from people who are different than me. And Australia just gave me that. I could try new things. I could be adventurous. I could take risks in a way that I didn't feel like I could back home, which is really interesting. So I think sometimes we put expectations on places to fulfill us, right? And going to Australia, I could go and say, I'm going to be someone different. I could embody the traits of people that I admired in a way that I feel like I couldn't do back home, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so you didn't go back to Australia like you had promised yourself you would, but it doesn't sound like you regret that and that you're in a good place with that decision. So you said life happened, Ashley. Let's talk about that. You would go on to spend 10 years in Boston. So I'm just wondering, what comes to mind for you when you look back on life in Boston?
It was everything I didn't have in New Hampshire that I always wanted. I felt like I really had to prove myself, but I was up for the challenge. Boston was a larger community where people didn't act or behave like me or anything that I really had known growing up. And I had big plans for myself professionally. And so I worked at a couple recruitment firms doing social media marketing. And yeah, I was really focused on my career. And I went all in on that.
And how did that pan out for you?
It panned out pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I worked at a couple of recruitment firms. I built a career in content marketing and social media strategy that really turned into helping recruiters and sales folks leverage their personal brands for lead generation and things of that nature. And that really catapulted into a niche in marketing when it comes to helping folks with their professional brands and thought leadership, helping them get on stage. A beautiful intersection of career development and social media. My mom, she has a background in resume writing and career development. She worked at Exeter Academy and some of the local colleges around here. So I had a resume when I was 15 years old, which probably helped in some capacity. Yeah.
Love to hear that. Okay. So while you are grinding away in Boston, focused on your career, you do meet a man and you said 7 years with him before getting married.
I believe so. It's hard to keep track. It feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, we started dating. I met him sort of through work and we dated for a long time. We moved in together in the North Shore area, got married.
Why did it take so long to get married?
That's a good question. I think that's really actually a really good question. I think we both kind of took our time with it. I personally saw a lot of friends rush into marriages and settling down and having kids. And I don't think at any point we were questioning the relationship. We were just kind of taking it at our own speed. And I didn't feel the rush that I think a lot of people did.
So you didn't feel any pressure?
No, and neither did he. We were just going at our own pace, which was beautiful.
In hindsight, do you think that there was reasons beyond that why you waited so long?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, looking back on it now, maybe it's hard to know for sure, but he and I always went back and forth around having kids or not. And being very ambitious growing up, and seeing some of my friends from my hometown get married and settle down really quickly, I began to develop this narrative in my head that if I wanted big things from my life, kids would just get in the way of that. That became a narrative in my head, good, bad, or ugly. It's just what I knew. It's what I saw, right? And so I I was very ambitious. He was too. He moved up in his career very quickly for his age. So I think one of the things that bonded us. But we always went back and forth. I told him after we bought the house that, look, I don't know if I want to have kids. It's looking like a no. And I think he was really sad about that, but we loved each other. And so that was a sacrifice he made. He said, okay. And that made me love him even more. And it was clear to me that I think he really wanted to be a dad. And so I spent a couple years before we got married sort of really trying to ask myself those questions. Like, could I get to a place where I could give him that, right? Where I could give him fatherhood. And I got to a place where I never got to a place where I could fully answer that question. And so he originally said, okay, it's okay if we don't have kids. And then, I thought I could get to a place where I could give him that. And so I told him, I said, I think I can get to a place where we can go down that road. And then we got married, and he was starting to think about settling down and having kids, and he wanted to start trying, and I wasn't ready. And I saw therapists about it. I tried to figure this out. And so where we could finally be on the same page. And other things were happening at that same time, Troy. Like, we had bought the house. We actually bought 2 houses. We were lucky enough to be able to do that. And, he's a real homebody, and he liked working on house projects. And I just wanted to go kayak on the Charles River, and he wanted to pressure wash the patio. Right. And so our values and where we wanted to spend our time didn't align. And that got worse. And, I ended up I was getting really bad anxiety. I was having nightmares. I wasn't sleeping. I was just in a really bad place. And I finally, dragged myself for 6 months until I was like, look, my life has to look differently for my sanity. I can't keep living like this anymore. I want to go out and adventure. I want to travel. I can't stay here living this life that's not meant for me. And I said, I know you want to, settle down and have kids. I'm still not ready, and I don't know if I'll ever be ready. I can't make that decision right now. And I had a feeling when I finally spoke up, my heart was beating out of my chest when I told him, Troy. And I had a feeling that maybe that would be the end of us, but I still wasn't sure. I said, maybe there was a way we could work it out. And then he was like, Ash, I think we should separate. And then, everything unraveled from there.
Wow. Okay. There's so much that I'm curious about. Why did you ultimately come to the decision that you just weren't there with kids? Why weren't you able to convince yourself into it like you thought you might be able to?
Yeah, it's a great question. I didn't know it at the time, but I would have been making the decision for the wrong reasons, right? I'd be making the decision because I loved him. I do love him. I wanted him to be a father. I wanted to give him that. But somewhere along the way, I don't know if it was some advice I received, I realized that no, if I'm going to have kids, it's because I want kids. And that the decision will be made because it's going to fulfill me and my family. And I couldn't bring a child into the world for the wrong reasons.
That is very fair. Yeah, I'm in that headspace as well. That same narrative of, to be a good parent, you have to sacrifice a whole lot. Your careers, how you spend your time, your hobbies. And so you can't just go into it willy-nilly. You have to be fully invested and fully want that. And so I'm in a place right now where I don't know if I meet, also I've never been in love. So maybe if I'm actually in love with someone and then I would want to have children with them, maybe that will change my mind. But yeah, I think it's a decision that some people take too lightly because of how much it demands.
Very well said. I couldn't have said it better. And, I'm 38 years old and I still don't know if I want to have kids. I genuinely don't know. I'm a 50-50 split right now, believe it or not. I've been ruminating on this decision. I mean, it doesn't consume me, but I think about it a lot as a woman who is privileged enough to make that choice. And I have to say, being in that position of privilege of being able to choose, I think all the time, like, do I want to bring a child into this world? And is it the responsible choice too? I'm an only child. I tend to be selfish sometimes. I'm also a Leo. So I can be like kind of self-absorbed sometimes. And I don't feel like that's probably a good trait as a mom. But I ask myself, is it the responsible choice, especially under this political climate,
right,
to bring a child into this world? And that's not to negate folks in my circles who I love and admire, who are parents who have brought children into this world, and they made the conscious choice too. I give them a lot of credit, and I think they have a lot of courage to raise conscious children. I wonder sometimes, Troy, if they have more courage than I do to do that, right? Like, are they gutsier than me to raise children who are kind in a world of hate? Raise daughters to feel empowered about, and to like advocate for their rights when our current sitting president is threatening executive orders to take those rights away. Parents who I see every day drop their kids off at school. I genuinely don't know if I have the guts and the courage to do that every day. And I think about like maybe in their decision, their choice to say, I'm going to raise conscious children, maybe that in and of itself is an act of resistance or an act of defiance, or, they feel the fear and they do it anyway.
Well, I would argue you are a very gutsy and courageous person, just perhaps in different ways based on other parts of the story that we'll hear shortly. Back to the divorce. How did you not see this misalignment in values until that moment?
He was a very wonderful man. And we loved each other, and it probably had some rose-colored glasses on. Who doesn't? We were aligned on a lot of other things, and yeah, I don't know how else to put it. We were in love, and he was a wonderful man, and I'd never been in a position before where I thought that I would make such a sacrifice for someone I loved.
So when he delivered that statement of, I think we should separate, how did that land for you in that moment?
Yeah. It broke me. I had an idea that like maybe he would say that, but there was a part of me also that was like, we'll just figure it out. So there was a part of me that knew and a part of me that had no idea, which is kind of weird that could happen at the same time, that they're not mutually exclusive. At the same time, Troy, a huge, huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. I had, in some grandiose terms, I was living a lie. I was living somebody else's life that wasn't meant for me. And so speaking up and speaking my truth and telling the man I loved in a marriage where I was unhappy and my life needed to look differently, that comes with some huge consequences. And so a part of me was devastated and the other part was free.
Now, what was stopping you from going out and kayaking the Charles with your friends and hiking the mountains and going on the trips? I've never been married, so I don't know what are you supposed to do everything together or how? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I think in a healthy relationship, you do things together and you have your things that are separate. That's a great question. I actually don't know. I did love spending time with him, but I think actually, you know what? You have a great way of asking questions that make people realize things about themselves that they didn't know.
Maybe I should be a therapist.
Yeah, in your next life. You really have you're great at that. I think it was more a matter of, I actually didn't know I liked those things. I didn't know that they would give me such fulfillment and solace. It's funny. The summer before he and I had this conversation, I had gone out to visit a friend in Colorado. We road tripped around Aspen and a bunch of surrounding towns around there. We went kayaking. I had my 10-year reunion and connected with folks that I went to school with and didn't ever really know. And we were talking about adventure. I bought a surfboard probably 2 months before this happened, probably writing on the wall. I was like ready for a change.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that those things were everything I needed. But they started to come into my life and in a way that I just gravitated towards them. And, things were rocky in our marriage too at that time, right? For obvious reasons. And so I found myself gravitating towards the outdoors.
Yeah. The writing was on the wall. Okay. So divorce is an often messy, costly process, both financially and emotionally and time-wise as well. How did that process go for you?
Well, it's funny because the way that we went about the divorce process symbolized our love for each other. It was not easy emotionally, but it was easy logistically and financially. We barely used a lawyer. It was kind of like a full clean break, and he moved on and I moved on. So I'm grateful for that. Luckily, we don't have kids to make things, that's a huge other added layer. So it was a clean break, and I took the dog, which was his dog, by the way.
Oh, no.
That was probably one of the hardest parts, is seeing his face when we decided together that I would take the dog.
Wow.
That was hard.
This sounds like the healthiest divorce that I can recall. It's almost easier when there's a big blow up or someone cheats or does something unforgivable. Duh, of course you get divorced. But in this situation, it sounds like you two were still very much in love. And because you loved each other and respected each other so much, you had to separate. It almost doesn't make sense.
It almost doesn't make sense, Troy, but it does. Yeah, we're lucky, but the decision was made in love. And people listening to this will probably be like, oh, what the fuck? Like that never happens, right? But it's symbolic of our time together and how much we loved and respected each other. I think the biggest thing is we loved each other enough to give each other the lives that we wanted and that were meant for us. I have no doubt that he is a great dad. I have no doubt whatsoever. And I'm glad that in a weird way, I got to give him that.
Mm. How many years ago was this?
Almost
divorce?
Four and a half.
And he is a father now?
I believe so. I'm not sure, but I believe so.
You haven't really maintained touch with him?
No, we've severed all communication.
Coming up, what Ashley did with her long-awaited freedom and how she found a new home in the most unexpected of places. But first, I want to tell you about a place that feels like home to me, and that's Three Bridges Yoga. Just yesterday, 3BY hung up another plaque in the studio, their 7th consecutive Yoga Studio of the Year award. They win these awards because, their classes are incredible. If you want to sweat your butt off, KDB's got you. If you want to feel warm and fuzzy inside, then Whitney's got a class with your name on it. For something in the middle, you can go to my friend Caroline. But truth be told, there's tons of amazing studios on the Seacoast. The reason Three Bridges is the studio is because of the people. The community there is unlike any other, and the studio's owner, Stephanie, is unlike any person you've ever met. I haven't met anyone more kind than her, and that kindness oozes from the walls of Three Bridges, and it can't help but seep into your skin and make you a better person once you leave there. I personally would love to see you on the mat there soon. For the rest of March, new members can get one free class by using the code STORIES at digital checkout. That's code STORIES all month when buying a class online at threebridgesyoga.com. If you're an existing member, send an email to info@threebridgesyoga.com and Stephanie will customize a deal just for you. Another one of my favorite human beings on the Seacoast is Crystal Hicks. She's the face behind JOBTALK, a virtual career counseling business that helps you navigate every aspect of your career. Crystal, who recently won 40 Under 40 recognition from the Union Leader, has spent 17 years in the job sector, formerly of Lindt Chocolate and UNH Career Services. Crystal is extremely passionate about landing you your dream job, getting you the raise you deserve, or at the very least, connecting you to the right person who can take your career to the next level. Plus, she's a professor of a career development course at UNH's famed business school, which has produced several Seacoast Stories guests, so that's how you know she's legit. If you or your loved one needs a career boost, then I can't recommend JOBTALK enough. If you would like to be one of her 400 plus virtual clients she sees every year, then you can visit jobtalkllc.com to schedule a free intro call. But if you don't have time for counseling, our listeners can get one of Crystal's online courses for 50% off using the code Seacoast Stories 50 at checkout. All one word, Seacoast Stories 50, to get 50% off any course on subjects like building a great resume, cover letter, or LinkedIn profile. Excludes live sessions, only valid for the 4 JOBTALK Academy courses. So once you had this weight lifted off your shoulders and felt free, what did you do with this freedom?
I packed up my car, everything I owned in my car, and put my dog in the front seat. Actually, my best friend from home, from elementary school, drove with me. She sat in the front seat, dog in the back, put everything I owned in my car. And in March of 2020, I drove across country to California to start the next chapter of my life.
The day in March matters. What day in March?
I forget if it was the 7th or the 9th.
Okay.
But
So I feel like we universally recognize March 11th as the day that everything changed. So you and your friend and your dog get in the car to drive across the country. And I don't think you said where you were going.
I was going to San Diego. I had rented an apartment through apartments.com that was going to be ready for me when I got there.
Why San Diego?
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question too. I feel like, okay, so this goes back to many a folk you've interviewed, this elusive California-ness that attracts everyone who is either broken, lost, divorced, whatever, brokenhearted. I just wanted to be as far away from my life as possible. And I wanted a fresh start, or at least to a new chapter. And California with its outdoors and laid backness, it seemed like the perfect escape from everything that was going on here in New England.
So you get to California.
Yep.
Then what happens?
My apartment ends up being a scam. We laugh about it now, but I was like absolutely beside myself when it happened. My apartment ended up being a scam. Luckily, I got my money back. But now I'm out here.
How was it a scam?
I got it through apartments.com. Obviously, I couldn't see the place ahead of time. I signed something through apartments.com and then started to communicate with them and hearing crickets and started to do my research, and Google was saying, no, this company is a scam. So my best friend, she's on her first plane back to Boston because her family's waiting for her. And I'm in California, in San Diego. I've got one friend in San Diego and my cousin lives in Palm Springs. So I've driven however many miles, 3,500 miles in 8 days, get to California, don't have a place to live. And so I call my cousin in Palm Springs. I drive another 2.5 hours and I stay with her for a week or two just to sort out my everything.
And the world is also on fire at this moment as well, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, the other thing was they weren't showing apartments at all. California State was shutting down. And so I couldn't find a place to live and adventurers weren't making new friends, right? I couldn't go out and meet people. And so I'm in my cousin's kitchen and I'm like, Kristen, what do I do? What do I do? I didn't say it so jovial, but I was like, my support system's back in New Hampshire. My parents are in New Hampshire. My friend group is in Boston. And she's like, Ash, I think you know what to do. And so I found La Quinta hotels are dog friendly. So I found every La Quinta in like I don't know, however many miles. Like if I'm driving 6 to 8 hours in a day, where's the next La Quinta hotel? And I mapped out my trip back with every La Quinta hotel on I-40. I took the southern route.
Which La Quinta was your favorite?
Okay, Indianapolis, because
I'm going there next week. Wow, maybe I'll stay there.
Go to the one in Indianapolis because it is completely dilapidated. I don't even know if it's still there. Okay. And this is funny too, because all La Quinta hotels, first of all, I believe they had to stay open. They were deemed an essential business during COVID when it first started. But all La Quinta hotels were different. Some were really nice. Some were under construction. So I would have to call ahead and be like, are you guys still open? And got to Indianapolis and I was like, oh my God, where am I? It didn't feel safe. Half the latches on the doors didn't work. So I took my dog for a walk and I pulled my baseball bat out of my car and brought it in. And the front desk person was looking at me like, what the fuck are you doing? I was like, I don't feel safe. So, that helped. That helped because I'm a woman on the road on her own. I need a way to protect myself. And I played softball in high school. So.
All right. Okay, so Indy La Quinta, everyone, next time you're passing through, go there.
Maybe your next sponsor.
There, shout out. So your friend Kristen said that you know what you need to do. Did you truly feel that? Yeah, I have to go back home. This isn't going to work the way I wanted it to?
That's a great question, Troy. I genuinely don't know. I don't know if, at the time, I didn't know if I made the right call to move back. But I had the information I had. And here's what's funny. I am a vagabond. Sometimes I'm okay with not knowing. I like to be on the road. I feel safe there. And in that moment during COVID, I wanted stability and I wanted security. And that was weird for me because I had just left a marriage that was stable and secure. And I wanted the complete opposite. But now the situation changed, right? And I was craving that. And so my support system was back in the East Coast. And so I made the decision, good, bad, or ugly, based on the information I had and feeling like I wanted my people and my community. And that's, I believe, why I made the decision I made.
Yeah, perfectly okay to want to be around your people in that time in world history, unprecedented. So you're driving back, staying at all the La Quintas. You're going to go back to New England. Where did you decide to go?
Well, here's what's funny. So Airbnb had changed their rules. So I looked for Airbnbs in 4 states in New England, and the minimum number of days I could stay was 2 months because of COVID.
That's wild.
Cleaning fees and people not knowing and feeling scared. So in 4 states, I found one Airbnb in Brattleboro, Vermont that was kind of close to downtown and was pet friendly. And so I stayed there for 2 to 4 months. And that was just weird times, right? And even driving back. So I drove 7,000 miles in 3 weeks, which is crazy. And it was very apocalyptic on the road. It's like folks who've decided to rebel against state shelter-in-place laws.
Yeah.
Right? And then 18-wheelers. And that's really
with
it.
Bandanas on.
Yeah, it was very Mad Max.
Yeah,
exactly.
What a time.
Yeah, it was pretty weird. And so, found a place in Brattleboro, Vermont, stayed there for a little while, but realized it wasn't a long-term solution. And I needed more amenities. I needed a co-working space. I was trying to keep my business afloat at the time. And then I found on apartments.com.
Oh boy, why'd you go back to that?
I should have learned my lesson the first time. I found this place called the Orpheum in Dover, and it was just being built, and they had a co-working space underneath. It was pet friendly, downtown, and signed a temporary lease there. My thought at the time, Troy, was I'll set up shop here in Dover. I'll sign a temporary lease. You could sign it for as many months as you wanted. I'll wait out this COVID shitstorm and then go back to California and do it for real. And that Then I re-upped my lease after 7 months in Dover.
Okay, wait. So New Hampshire, growing up in New Hampshire had represented everything that you didn't want your life to be.
Yeah.
Why did you, I know Dover, the Orpheum had some of the amenities that you needed to work and have your dog, but I'm sure they're somewhere else in Vermont or in Connecticut or Mass that you could have gone as well.
It's a great question though, but at the time there were hardly any options, right? Especially for the amenities that I thought I needed to feel safe and secure and make sure my dog was okay. There weren't many options. So if it weren't Dover, like maybe it would have been somewhere else. Maybe it would have been in Vermont or Connecticut. But, again, my parents are in Tilton now and my friends are close in Massachusetts. So I was really just working with what I had available and what was close enough to my people.
Right. All right. So you're in Dover and you re-up this temporary lease. Why did you do that?
Well, COVID lasted longer than we all thought. And I met my neighbors next door, Stacy and John, shout out. And they took care of me. They made sure I had food and water, shelter. They helped me my first year. I spent Christmas alone because of COVID. And they helped me take my tree out. They just took care of me. They were my chosen family. And Stacy introduced me to the Babs. Shout out, the huge reason why I'm here. The Babs, the Badass Babes, were a group of hikers and adventurers here on the Seacoast. And they're one of the biggest reasons I'm here right now.
That's so cool about the Babs. Why did Stacy and John, who are older than you, take you under their wing, do you think?
I don't know. It's a good question. We should ask them. I have no idea. But they're adventurers. And Stacy went on the Camino with me in Spain. We spent 6 weeks hiking across northern Spain together.
Oh, wow.
They became my chosen family really quickly. And during a time where I didn't know where home was. I was trying to find what home might look like and feel like for me. They became my home.
As you were mid-30s, divorced, and just nomading it and trying to figure it all out, I'm wondering, what was the conversation in your head? What story were you telling yourself about the path that you were on? Were you thinking that you had made the wrong decisions, or this was the opposite? And yes, this is everything I ever wanted. I wanted this instability and not knowing what tomorrow was going to look like. What was the story that you were telling yourself?
Too many stories. That's why I'm still in therapy. The stories changed a lot and they evolved. And that's why I'm trying to get it all down on paper in a manuscript, because they have changed so much. But I think in the beginning, Troy, it was more like, why am I like this? Right? Like, I had a loving husband. We were fine financially. Things looked great on paper and we had a good life, but I wanted more and I wanted different. And I was like having so much anxiety that like I was living a life that I wasn't meant to live. And by speaking up and saying like, no, I need something else. I need something different for my livelihood, for my sanity. I wonder why I'm like that. Like, why do I need the open road? Why do I need to not know? Why do I need to rebel against everything that, most people would want? Right? I think that's really what it was about. Like, why did I do this to my life? And why did I do this to myself? And then in the last 4 years, taking steps to figure out the life that I'm meant to live and the life that is authentic to me, one that is in the outdoors and self-reflective and, starting to write more and taking care of my people and figuring out what community means to me. That's the answer. That's what I didn't know I was searching for. So I think it's a roundabout way of answering your question. Like, I'm still asking myself those questions. But the narrative has changed a lot from like, why did I do this to myself? Why am I like this? To, oh yeah, this is what I want and need. And this is the type of life that is serving me.
Tell me more about some of these people, these badass babes.
It's a group of women who march to the beat of their own drum. These are women of all ages who live outside their comfort zone and love the outdoors and live lives that are seemingly unconventional or non-traditional in some capacity.
How so?
CJ and Bex, they're in their 60s and they've hiked the Appalachian Trail and the Long Trail. They're more badass than I'll ever be. And they've been librarians and like kindergarten teachers. It's just really crazy. They hike 4,000 footers. They're teaching children how to be self-aware and to love thy neighbor, even when they may not feel that love in return because of who they are. They're my people.
How many women are in this group?
Well, it evolves. Maybe 10 or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a text thread with the name Badass Babes?
There is,
Yeah,
yes.
I figured there would be.
Yes, we support each other on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't it so wild? Because now that I'm in this community, and I've noticed this about the Seacoast, just like my friendship circle is so diverse and unexpected. I'm a 29-year-old single guy, and so many of my friends are like a 38-year-old single woman, like a 45-year-old married woman, like I dated a 23-year-old woman, and like I'm also tight with like a 27-year-old dude. It's just all over the place.
Yeah.
But it's normal. It doesn't feel out of the ordinary, because when you just find people who you're just so aligned with values-wise, like the number and the differing lifestyles doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I think that says a lot about you, Troy. Like, I'm not going to say that that's like a Seacoast thing, right? Like that can happen anywhere, but I think it says more about you, and who cares how old your friends are, right? They can teach you a lot if they're younger or older or whatever, whoever they are, right? So I applaud that and I admire that in you, because I've been in situations, especially in close relationships, where them like, you're hanging out with like a 60-year-old, like what's that about? And I think that says a lot about them too. But I think it says a lot about you and what you're open to and how you want to learn and better yourself, and how you want to learn about yourself because of the people you surround yourself with. Like, who cares?
Well, thank you for recognizing that, but I'm sure it's all just Seacoast specific thing. Okay, so you've been in New Hampshire now, your original home, the place that you wanted to get away from. How long have you been here for now?
Since May of 2024. So we're coming up on 5 years.
Since May of 2020.
Sorry, 2020, yes.
What's kept you around so long?
I have been searching my entire life for a feeling of being home, and it wasn't my childhood home. At least I didn't feel that way at the time. I didn't feel that there was a safe space to learn and grow and figure out what I wanted and who I was. That wasn't my high school. That was definitely not college in Connecticut. Maybe I got glimpses of that in Australia, but that was for a finite period of time. That wasn't Boston. I think through the divorce, I've learned so much about who I am and who I want to be, that whoever I was before, the environment I was in before, like didn't allow for that. So through the last 4 years and the community that's here, and a lot of the folks you've interviewed, I've felt so at home at Studio One, so at home, and some of the yoga studios around here too. And so this is the first time ever I have felt at home.
That is so beautiful. What do you do now in your everyday life that you weren't doing before when you felt trapped?
Oh, everything. Everything. I'm saying yes to things that I want to try or learn, and I'm making them happen. I'm, I'm trying new things.
Want to come to Ecstatic Dance with me soon?
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
Okay,
Yeah, let's try that.
We'll do that.
That sounds really good. Actually, I've been curious about that. I'm hiking the 4,000 footers and some of the awesome mountains here in the Whites. I'm trying new things with my career. I'm speaking a lot more. I feel free and I feel safe to be the person that I am and who I want to be.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. A lot of the story that you've shared today, you've mentioned the memoir that you are writing, and you also shared some of the story, I believe, last year on stage in Boston as well. Why is this something that you feel other people really need to hear?
Yeah, that's a great question, Troy. Thank you for asking. I'm not sure. I think the manuscript started as just like trying to get all my thoughts down on paper, especially as the narratives in my head were changing. And I was trying to figure all this out, which is an ongoing journey. But there's some universal truths in here somewhere, and I'm determined to find them. And there's got to be something within my story that will help somebody else, especially women who are, or people who identify as women who are feeling stuck in jobs and relationships in spaces that are not serving them. Women who maybe are afraid to speak up, to live a life that is authentic to them and a life that is intentional, and live outside their comfort zone if they want, and to show them that they can live a life differently than the one that people tell them they should live.
Well, I'm not a woman, but I will read the book regardless.
Okay,
I can't wait to read it and see what comes of it. Ashley, thank you so much for joining the show today and for sharing your story. I love these kinds of stories, and it's so awesome learning about your personal evolution and your commitment to learning more about yourself when a lot of people, especially as they age, just kind of become more stuck in their ways. And, well, this is my life and I'm just going to lay in this grave that I buried for myself. But you want more for yourself. And so I commend you for that. And in that vein, we have one final question. We ask the same final question at the end of every episode every week, and I'll ask it to you. Ashley, knowing what you know now about how your life has turned out, what advice would you tell to your 22-year-old self?
Such a great question. I think there's two big ones. Number one is speak up. When things aren't working for you, speak up. Because if you don't, it's going to cost you your livelihood. That's a big one. And I think the other big thing is forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know. That's taken me a long time to get there. Not knowing whether or not I wanted to have kids in my marriage. I feel so sad about that because I feel like I could have saved us a lot of heartache if I just knew. But I didn't. And that just has to be okay. And it is okay. It's okay with me. I'm at peace about that. So I would say forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know.
Thank you so much for joining me, Ashley. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Troy. You've been great about sharing, helping folks share their compelling stories here in the Seacoast. And I hope you have more opportunities for you to do that for yourself.
That's Ashley Ryall, a self-described Seacoast adventurer, future author, and most importantly, a free spirit. To support Ashley, I suggest you do one thing today for you. Not something society expects you to do, but something that makes you feel absolutely at home within your own skin. A big thanks to all of you for listening, and to the very special group of listeners who came to Ornell's barbecue last Thursday. The 7 of us enjoyed a delicious meal while we shared stories, cracked jokes, and best of all, stayed present with each other for nearly 3 hours. I'll have more details on April's Seacoast Stories meetup, but for now, if you see me around town this week, perhaps at Flamingo's Coffee Bar, the Live Freely Market, or at the local Love event this Thursday in Portsmouth, please stop me and say hi. I would love to hear your story. Until next week, everybody, have a great week. Live free or die.